Poncho's officially back. Now we wait on Dante Moore. So much to get to on a Friday Night Live.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it's that time. Once again, for Locked On Ducks, I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all so much for helping make that the case, especially my everydayers. And I tell you what, haven't done a show in a few days. I promise I will get back into the swing of things here shortly on an episode that's brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. So, I was on Christmas vacation. Hope you all had a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and so I haven't yet had a chance to react to the Poncho news. And so, here we are. This is not a piece of news that you are underselling if you got really excited or if you told your friend or your mom or your dad or your family or whoever you were with. This is a significant development for two reasons. Number one, you're bringing back a starter on the offensive line for a group that is losing at least three guys going into 2026. That's piece of news number one that makes it really important. But the other angle that you have to look at is that he's the starting center. So you don't have to work somebody in that now has to learn all the calls, develop a relationship with Dante Moore. And if he does come back, I'm going to talk about him more in the second segment, but if he comes back, you just have such a level of continuity between one of the most important relationships on either side of the ball. So Poncho coming back is huge. And frankly, I did not expect this to be the case. Based on what he had said before the season, the type of year that he has had going into the Orange Bowl, of course, knock on wood, he's been mostly healthy this year. Has been dinged up, of course, a little bit here and there, the USC game, but overall has been fine. And the way that he's played, he's a finalist for the Remington Award. He doesn't end up winning. The guy at Iowa wins, which is hard to argue with that. I mean, we watched that Iowa offensive line do a lot of really impressive stuff against a good Oregon front four in that game in Iowa City, but we all know who got the win. So it's all good. Having him back was such a big surprise to me, and I'm sure it was a surprise to many of you as well. And there are a lot of other decisions, many of whom I'll get to on today's show, that we're still waiting on, Dante Moore being the biggest one. But if I had ranked, the list of guys that we're all thinking about, I wouldn't have put Poncho last on the list to make him least likely to return, but he would not have been at the top of my list. For a guy who said, yeah, I'll probably be in the NFL draft next year, goes out and is deemed to be one of the 3 or 4 best centers in all of college football, and every single metric that you look at or dive into backs that up. Yeah, that's somebody I thought was going to the NFL draft. And of course, this came on the heels of, the Bear Alexander announcement on the other side. Now, that's somebody who I thought might have ridden the tide that he's on right now for his rising NFL draft stock compared to what it would have been had he come out last year. And I thought he might have gone to the NFL draft. But nope, he comes back. And now Poncho comes back. And I'm sure many of you have wondered, as I have, if this is going to be a little snowball. If we're going to see this start to trickle out in the best way in the coming weeks. Now, Oregon season could come to a crashing and disappointing end on Thursday, in which case good news would probably be warranted in Eugene. And maybe the rest of the announcements, one way or the other, are not going to come until after that game. I think that's probably the case. Like if we get a piece of news Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday that somebody like a Dylan Thieneman is coming back for next year, that would surprise me a little bit. But Poncho surprised me, so we'll never say never on that front. But I think that with those two guys both coming back gives me a greater level of confidence that Oregon's not going to lose all of the defensive linemen. Whether it is NIL related, cultural related, both, NFL draft stock, it's usually a combination of those three factors that weighs on a kid's mind as to whether he wants to go to the NFL draft or stay. There's clearly some serious momentum in Eugene for this stuff to keep on happening. So I think about guys like Mateo Uyunglele, Tatum Tuioti, Amari Washington. If Bear Alexander and Poncho are both coming back, I don't see how Oregon isn't able to keep at least one of those guys, if not two. I'm not going to get my hopes up and say three. I'm not. But I think it's a great sign for how many of those guys will come back. I don't think they will all come back. If they do, then Oregon will have national championship hype next season, regardless of how this year ends, like we have literally never seen before. That I can guarantee. But Poncho coming back to be a foundational piece of what should, again, be a good offensive line that will certainly look different. So, Poncho will be at center. Davey Uli's not going to be a guy that goes to the NFL draft, I wouldn't think. And you're losing Emmanuel Prenon, Alex Harkey, and Isaiah World. I think one of those tackle spots will be filled by the combination or maybe just one of Fox Crater or Janoris Wilson. Janoris Wilson would be the most likely of the two. He has played the most. We saw Fox Crater really in one game. He'll be a redshirt sophomore come 2026. We saw him against USC. Dude was darn impressive. Does USC have the best front seven in college football? No. But between now and then, what will he have the chance to do? Undergo an entire offseason and have the chance to compete as a starter. I think you will see at least one, maybe two transfers come in on Oregon's offensive line. That would be my guess. I would be pretty surprised, given the caliber of team that they are likely to have in 2026, barring some seriously unforeseen circumstances, that they would roll with two basically brand new tackles. And calling Janoris Wilson brand new probably isn't the most apt description, but Fox Crater would be all but brand new. I think those guys both play. Obviously, you've got Emmanuel Hanicho coming in as well. I'm sure some people will point that out. I never expect, no matter how highly rated a recruit a guy is, I never expect a true freshman to play on the O-line. Penei Sewell is the outlier of all outliers on that front. And especially, I don't expect a guy to come in and be a starter. So I think what Oregon will have on the offensive line next year is going to be good. I think you'll have one of the two tackles. We'll see what they feel like doing at guard. Maybe they feel like Hanicho is ready right away. I don't know. We'll have to kind of wait and track that throughout the course of the offseason. But knowing that you can bring back two starters and one heavy rotation guy on the offensive line, massive. Absolutely massive for Oregon's 2026 outlook. So, keep leaving your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, however you want to get in touch. Someone just threw out in the chat, Kavika Rogers. Yeah, Kavika Rogers has another year of eligibility. Maybe they feel like he's ready to step in and be a starter, or maybe they feel like he's someone that is better as a rotation guy. I think he's been more than fine. The thing about that trio of tackles, Crater, Wilson, and Kavika Rogers potentially, Crater obviously hasn't played a ton, and Rogers and Wilson have played way more in their careers, but they've played mostly at right tackle. Now, the availability of offensive linemen, we'll see. There's a guy in the portal from Auburn who I think started all 12 games this past year for the Tigers and was a top transfer prospect in their last cycle. I'm not saying him specifically, but that caliber of guy, I think is who Oregon would go out and try and get if they were going to find their starting left tackle in the transfer portal the way they did with Isaiah World, which I think has gone very, very well. So the other thing that gives me confidence is that if they bring in a couple of new guys via the portal, I don't have any qualms really about them all gelling together because Poncho just did this and will be one of the best centers again in college football next year. So he has made great strides throughout the course of his career. He will be an NFL draft pick at some point. He would have been this year. And instead, he's going to be on Oregon's roster next year. So I think he's an NFL-ready center here and now. I'm not an NFL draft expert, but I have seen a snap or two of football, and I've also glanced at a few mock drafts. He would have been taken this year. Maybe he wants to up his draft stock, compete for maybe it would be another national championship. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I don't know. We'll save that for next week and such. But keep leaving your thoughts below. Hit me up on Twitter. All of that good stuff. So, what does this mean for Dante Moore? Let's discuss that next. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. And certainly Oregon's Orange Bowl matchup with Texas Tech will have some big-time shifts. And NFL games have that too. And by the way, speaking of the Orange Bowl, it has moved out, last I checked, according to our friends at FanDuel, to Oregon minus 2.5. You know what? I'll double check it in real time right here. Let's see where it's at. Oregon has been a slight favorite the entire time. And nope, they're sitting 1.5, back down. It has gone up and down over there at FanDuel. If you think Oregon's rolling Texas Tech, Oregon minus 1.5 is probably what you're looking for. If you feel like it's the other way around, I know plenty of Tech fans are indeed that confident. Texas Tech plus 1.5 probably feels like free money to you. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. On the road means bottled water, second segment sips. But you do what you got to do. Okay. So, what does this mean for Dante Moore? Well, I don't think there's any question this makes it at some level more likely that Dante Moore will return. The bond between a quarterback and center been well documented. When I think of that sort of connection, I go to Peyton Manning and Jeff Saturday. Those two guys, they were tight. And I think it has to mean something that Dante Moore, after what he went through at UCLA, his first year starting full-time, his second year with Oregon, that Poncho's been his guy, and so far, it's gone pretty darn well. There have been plenty of mock drafts. I wish Mel Kiper would knock it off, quite frankly, and stop putting Dante Moore as the first pick in the 2026 NFL draft. But a non-zero reason to that is Dante Moore has had time to throw. And who's probably the best pass protector? I mean, Emmanuel Prenon is really good. But Poncho's probably a little bit better as a pass protector, and Prenon as a run blocker is exquisite. But both are top-tier offensive linemen. Poncho, of course, a finalist for the Remington Award. Prenon, I think, was third or fourth team AP All-American. So those two guys have been elite. So Poncho being at the center of it all means Dante Moore wouldn't have to make a new relationship, and he also wouldn't have to worry about suddenly facing a bunch of pressure right up the middle, because when you've got Poncho up there, you're doing just fine. You're going to have a lot of clean pockets. I don't know if this is still the case, but earlier this year, PFF was floating out a stat that he'd allowed like one sack or one pressure. I don't know if it'd be one pressure. That'd be ridiculous. I think he's allowed one sack in his entire career as a pass blocker. So he is incredibly elite, incredibly elite at that spot. The question to me is not, does it make it more likely Dante Moore comes back? The question is, how much more likely does Poncho's return make Dante Moore coming back? So I think it has to alter his calculus at least a little, that he has such a known commodity at such an important spot. And of course, he saw the way that the staff put together the roster this year and saw it, kind of watching from the sideline a bit, literally in 2024. And then he steps in, and the core of returners that they're going to have, I think Dante Moore is going to be fully aware of the opportunity, regardless of how this upcoming season ends. Hopefully it ends with 3 more victories for the Ducks, but he's not going he's not going to be ignorant to what Oregon's roster is and then what it can be. And so with his starting center coming back, I don't think he would worry a lot about, got to find 2 or 3 new starters on the offensive line. No, I don't think that's going to be a concern. And I think this helps to lessen that even further. Then you look around at the weapons that he's going to have coming back, which I'll talk about more later on the show. It's going to be an elite group, man. Elite. Jamari Johnson made 1 catch against James Madison, and I feel like that helped his NFL draft stock. I mean, people that have been watching him all year, he has definitely outperformed my expectations for him this season, but he looks pretty darn awesome. And then the receiving core, well, that looks pretty darn good. And the coaching staff, that's going to be new. I wonder how much that factors into it, but you at least have a guy there calling plays down Drew Merringer for 2026 that Dante Moore knows. So I don't know that the fundamental question or questions that Dante is pondering as he thinks about the NFL decision change with Poncho's return. I think it's just another slight feather in the cap of, yeah, I know what I'm getting here. I know what I'm going to have. And I don't know what I'm getting if I go in the NFL draft or who's going to be selected. The Giants and the Raiders are literally trying to lose for this weekend so that they can get the number 1 overall pick. Not the first time we've seen it. Not the first time we've seen it. So that leads me to this SSA I wanted to work into today's show. If you are new here, that is Spencer's scale of agreement. You submit a take. I tell you 1 to 10 how much I agree with it and why. This SSA came in. After the experience Dante had at UCLA, would he want to wait until the next draft to potentially get picked by a better organization? Here's the only way. And this would be, 9-dimensional chess. The only way at this point that could happen is if Dante Moore comes back to Oregon and then doesn't play as well, and that makes him fall from being the number 1 overall pick in a relatively weak quarterback draft in 2026 to maybe the number 9 overall pick in the 2027 NFL draft following his 2026 season. Unless Dante Moore suffers a serious injury, another part of his concern, I don't think his NFL draft stock is going to let him fall out of the first round. He keeps getting better and better, and if he comes back in 2026, frankly, with the team that Oregon should have at that time, I think it's more likely he'd be the number 1 pick in the 27 draft than in the 26 draft, because you realize what is generating all the buzz with Dante Moore right now, and he could be the number 1 overall pick, or he'd be the number 2 overall pick. It's him and Mendoza. Where do you want to go? Maybe it'll come down to their playoff matchup if Oregon gets by Texas Tech and Indiana gets by Alabama, both of which are, of course, major ifs at this point in time. But what has made him an appealing prospect in a short amount of time is not some outrageous production. Dante Moore's stats this year, let me pull them up real quick. Dante Moore's stats through 13 games, 72.4%, that's good. 28 touchdowns, 8 picks, solid. 3,046 passing yards. He was a sub 3,000 yard passer in the regular season. Now, so was Fernando Mendoza, and the dude won the Heisman Trophy. But what does Dante Moore's draft stock do? How much does he solidify himself as the number 1 pick if he comes back to Oregon and actually has a big statistical season? When Bo Nix was a Heisman finalist, he played in both the Pac-12 championship game and the Fiesta Bowl against Liberty. And I believe his college stat... yes, here we are. He went for over 4,500 yards and 45 touchdowns. Now, he got taken 12th. Why? He wasn't seen as quite as elite of a prospect as some of the other guys in that draft class. They all came out at the same time, and they still got taken ahead of him. J.J. McCarthy was taken, I believe, ahead of Bo Nix. Good decision. It's going well for the Vikings. It's going great. So, Poncho coming back helps. There's no question about it. I don't think it 100% locks in Dante Moore's decision. I don't. Because if he goes on an incredible run and gets buzzed to be the number 1 pick, again, just off of traits and the way that he can throw the football, it's hard to turn down. It's not impossible. It is hard to turn down. There is precedent in Oregon. I'm sure the Ducks will make this point as a staff to Dante Moore that Justin Herbert came back and his stock went up when he returned for his senior season. And Marcus Mariota, Dante's frankly in a more similar position to Mariota because Mariota was a redshirt sophomore, was going to be a first-round pick. He came back, won the Heisman. He was the number 2 overall pick to a former Heisman winner who had, according to the NFL, which I kind of understood, I guess, but better NFL traits, Jameis Winston. So if Dante Moore comes out in 2027, yeah, I think that quarterback draft class is going to be much, much better than this one. But Dante will have the built-in advantage there of he had that hype before. Well, that hype can't go down. It can only go up unless he gets hurt. So it helps. It helps. That's the but going back to the SSA that I kind of got away from there. Would he wait to get picked by a better organization? There will be more good quarterbacks next year, so you could talk yourself into, like, teams all the time talk themselves out of certain players. They get, name fatigue, really, like, oh, we're still talking about this guy, still talking about, oh, hey, here's a new flashy guy over here. Let's go and take him instead of the guy who we already knew and had decided a long time ago was going to be really good. Yeah. This is a 2.5 on the SSA for me because you can't operate that way. The Broncos were picking 12th because they hadn't been very good. And Michael Penix got taken by the Falcons. Organization's a disaster. It's just the downside of being a first-round quarterback. You're more than likely, especially if you're getting picked in the top 10, being taken by someone who stinks. Now, if you were to, try to plan out what's the best possible place, and it pains me to say this as a Seahawks fan, the best place that Dante Moore could wind up, because they have, I think it's the Falcons pick, who are not any good. The Rams are going to be in the top 10. Maybe they would trade up and try to take Matt Stafford's replacement. I would love that for Dante, but I would hate that personally because I don't want to root against him in the NFL, which I would then have to do at some level. So, yeah, keep leaving your thoughts in the comments. Curious to hear what you guys have to say. What about the rest of the NFL draft decisions? What about them? First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. There's nothing like college football. Tailgates, packed stadiums, being right there in the middle of it all. The energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. But actually getting tickets, that part used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, prices jumping at checkout. That's why Game Time gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. So, if you're thinking about going to the Orange Bowl, which you should, I know Miami's a long ways away. I know plenty of you will make the trip. I'm sure some of you won't. But for those of you that are going to go all the way to Miami, and you're worried, man, this flight's going to be expensive. Man, the hotel's going to be expensive. If you want to save money on tickets, save money anywhere you can, Game Time is the way to do it. I've used Game Time several times over the last few years. You know why? Because they give you a great deal. They save you money. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Locked On College, all one word, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. All right, rolling along, wrapping up today's show with some SSAs. Appreciate you guys being patient as I was venturing around in Disneyland for the week. It was a good time, as always. So, even though it rained. Let me start with this one. I got an SSA that Brandon Finney transfers out from Oregon. That's a 1. I understand where folks are coming from. There was some social media. I asked a couple folks about it. Did not get any level of concern anywhere. I would be stunned beyond belief if Brandon Finney transfers out from Oregon. That would make so little sense in so many ways. So, Dan Lanning still has not lost a starter to the transfer portal. I don't think that would begin with Brandon Finney. Hopefully, those are not famous last words. I really don't think they are. All right, let's go through an SSA that the following players return. Evan Stewart, Mateo Dante, Amari Tatum, Thieneman, and Sadiq. So let me start at the bottom. Sadiq is a 1. I don't know how Oregon could possibly get Kenyon Sadiq back. And with how well Jamari Johnson has played this year, I'm sure they'll try to get him back because you love having both of them, and what Will Stein and Drew Maringer, of course, tight ends coach, has done with those guys. Maybe him getting promoted to OC would make that a little more likely, so I'll bump Sadiq to a 1.5, but he is going to be first tight end off the board, and it's probably going to be in the first 32 picks. So, yeah, Sadiq's a 1.5. Next lowest of this group would probably be Dylan Thieneman. Thieneman has played at a really high level. He has got NFL traits. He does everything. I love having Dylan Thieneman back there. And look, if I were the Oregon staff and NIL collective, yeah, I'd pay top dollar for any of these guys to be back. I don't care what I feel like I have in, the next crop of players, what I have waiting in the wings. If you can get any of these guys back, pay it, whatever it costs. Just go for it. Absolutely go for it. So, Thieneman, I'll put that one at a 3. By the way, just for what it's worth, I would have had Poncho at about a 3 as well because of the season he had. Tatum, I'm at an 8 with Tatum. So, he has been Oregon's most productive defensive lineman statistically this year. I think he will want to come back for a couple reasons. Number one, his dad is the defensive line coach. Number two, I believe he'll get drafted because he's so productive. For an edge in the NFL, he is an inch or two short compared to what they usually look for. And I know that sounds crazy, and maybe I'm reading too much into that. But I actually think it's more likely Tatum comes back than Mateo. I think both should come back, because I think that Tatum doing it for 2 seasons would maximize his draft stock, and I think Mateo's still got work to do. So, yeah, I'd put Tuioti at an 8. He'd be pretty high. Back down at the other end, I think Amari Washington, I'll put this at a 3.5. Bear Alexander returning and, making that dynamic duo the lead tandem again. I mean, they've been nightmares for every team to go against this year, and Texas A&M will get their crack at it on Thursday. But he's another guy that his draft stock is so high. I don't think it's the same as Sadiq, because Sadiq is tight end 1. He's going to be the first player taken at his position. That's even different than being a shoo-in to be a first-round pick, which Amari Washington, I think, is. But, has he busted the box score with his stats this year? No. So I'll put Amari at a 3.5. Mateo's at a 7.5 for me. Because, again, he could go out and get drafted, but he's got so much more in the tank. Like, he has shown this year, and he talked about this Big Ten Media Days when we were talking to him in the scrum about how he wanted to be better against the run. He absolutely has been. But he's got one more gear that we have not seen. 10.5 sacks last year. I think he's sitting about 5 right now. He has been a good player for Oregon's defense, don't get me wrong. He has not been the best version of himself. I don't think we have seen that. I don't think we even saw it last year, quite frankly. He can play himself into being a surefire first-round pick. Now, the reason I put him lower than Tatum, who I've got at an 8, and I put Mateo, I'll go Tatum's an 8, and Mateo's at a 7, is Mateo is 6'5", and Tuioti is 6'3". And I know that sounds ridiculous. That is how the NFL operates. By the way, at some level, colleges operate. I knew a kid in high school who wanted to play football at Oregon. He was an offensive lineman. This was, of course, like 2 or 3 coaches ago. I don't even remember who exactly he was getting recruited by from an offensive line coach standpoint. But they told him, yeah, we like you. I think he was a 3-star recruit, but you're about half to a full inch too short. That's the way this stuff works. So, yeah, Mateo's got to finish quarterback sacks better. That's it. So, yeah, Mateo at a 7. Dante, 6. I've had this at a 5.5. Now I'll go 6 because Poncho is back. So, Dante Moore's at a 6. Evan Stewart, Evan Stewart returning to Oregon in 2026 on the SSA. I think he's going to play. I think. Not 100% certain. Has not been verified. I've just been told for a while that if Evan Stewart plays this year, it would be in a playoff game. And Texas Tech is the one that he suited up last week. I think Evan Stewart plays this week. Like, Evan Stewart playing this week is also probably a 6 on the SSA. I think his return to Oregon, I'm also going to stick that at a 6. It's like cautious optimism there. So Sadiq 1.5, Thieneman 3.5, Tatum is an 8, Omari is 3.5, Dante's a 6, Mateo's a 7, Evan Stewart is a 6. Those are the SSAs on those guys returning to Oregon for next year. I missed trivia the other day. I overthought it. The TV show All-American on the Warner Brothers is based on a true story. The main character in the show is based off what Oregon football player? The main character's name is Spencer James. And I thought it was a pseudonym. It's not. It's based on Spencer Paysinger. Dang it! That was so gettable. So unbelievably gettable. Anyway, that's how we wrap today's show. Good to talk to you guys. See you on Monday. Appreciate everyone listening. See you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.